Brr. Like, it's cold out there, Batman. If you didn't know already. I'm certainly not one to complain about the weather. I did have to go out to my car this morning, and it didn't start. And I couldn't get it going, so I have to wait till later today. But anyway, so I was forced to stay home, which isn't always a bad thing. I can get some stuff done. How are you doing, everybody? Good afternoon. Good Wednesday afternoon. I have my hat on, my toque on, because it's freezing cold. And it also says Face Off for Mental Health, which we'll talk about, which I have talked about on the regular weekly show. And today is Bell Let's Talk Day. Now, I'm going to be honest. I was kind of deciding as to whether or not to do this broadcast for Bell Let's Talk Day. I'm not associated with Bell. I don't work for Bell. I'm not being paid or anything like that. Those of you who know me know that I believe in talking about the mental health issue. And for some people, it's a controversial day. I get it. I really just thought this would be the good day instead of me forwarding all these texts for 5 cents. And I don't even know if Bell really does or doesn't. I don't know. I don't know if it matters whether they do or they don't. It's a day to capture the attention. And we can do it any day, but today is, I think, people are paying extra attention. So doing what I do, which is this, I thought this would be the perfect way to have the conversation and have people join and get some more awareness out there. And I did read an article the other day that said this Bell Let's Talk Day doesn't really do anything. It was an interesting article. I'm not going to go too deep into it, but if all we were doing was talking and that was it, and we weren't doing anything else, then yes, I would say that Bell Let's Talk Day doesn't do anything. But the discussions bring out points. The discussions can often bring out ideas on how we handle it in our communities. Government is always a discussion about it. We tend to go to our governments. What's our government doing about it? And I do believe that our government should be involved. I'm just not sure to what level. I think it starts at home, starts in our communities. So there you go. I got all of that and the hat too. It's actually, and I don't wear hats typically, but St. Clair Child and Youth Services gave me this hat, and it fits apparently. So I don't know. And today's the perfect day to be wearing a toque. I went out this morning and I was like, and I had my scarf on, and I never wear my scarf. And I had my hat on. And I was very grateful for that. So, Face Off from Mental. I'm not going to wear it for the whole show, but oh boy, there we go. I have the pin too, so there you go. I don't have to wear the hat the whole time. So, welcome everybody. For those of you who are joining us here, please click the share link. This is my way of spreading the word today on Bell Let's Talk Day. Again, there's different opinions about Bell Let's Talk Day. This is really just a conversation about mental health, and it's a special day for it. I do have a couple of special guests here in the lobby that I'm going to bring in right now as they're both ready. And there is my first guest. Ian Linson is here joining us. Ian, thanks for being here, buddy.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. And Craig McKenzie from St. Clair Child and Youth. Thanks for your time, buddy.
Good afternoon, David. How are you?
I'm doing great. I know you have a busy day and a lot going on there, the agency today, so I appreciate the time.
Not a problem.
And I wanted to point out, everybody, Ian, so somebody is a young man, he's away at college or university, I guess, right now, and somebody I met probably going on 4 years ago now, and he's a rapper. He's like what I like to call a clean rapper. He's always got positive messages out there, and we've had a lot of conversations involving some mental health and bullying and that sort of thing. And Ian, you reached out to me when I hadn't even gotten to you yet to ask you to be here, and you just saw me putting this out there, and you were like, "Can I be a part of the broadcast?" Why was this important to you to be here today?
I feel like someone like myself that has gone through a lot of mental health problems in the past few years, and someone that I guess, does have such a big platform because I do rap and I do perform and things like that, and people know me from that. I feel
Mhm.
like now would be a good time to reach out and tell people that it is okay to talk about it.
Yeah. Um, do you have some experiences that you're willing to share with us, or how you've dealt with it, or what's brought you to where you are now?
I have experienced a lot of problems with mental health and depression and anxiety, along with suicide, which it was really hard to get through. Um, no doubt there, I had to spend some time into the hospital in Sarnia and had to spend some time at St. Clair Child and Youth. But a lot of that stuff does help because
Mhm.
going through it alone isn't the best thing. And that's what I tried to do for so long.
Right.
And I tried to just act like, oh, I'm fine, like nothing's going wrong. But then I found I was getting I was becoming more depressed, more anxious. My anxiety started to kick in a lot more. And so I finally reached out, and that's when I went to the hospital, got a counselor. Um, Even here in university, I see counselors and seek help here. And I find that helps a lot.
Well, glad that you did. And thanks for sharing that here today. Because, well, like I say, you and I have a relationship. I've seen you grow from a teenager into a young man, and now off to university and pursuing your dreams. Um, what was it a positive experience? What was the experience like when you reached out to these agencies and said, I need help? Was it welcoming? Was it comfortable? You obviously had to you had to I guess find the courage to reach out in the first place, but once you did, how did that go?
It it was a little tough at first because I wasn't used to doing something like this. But the first day I came into St. Clair Child and Youth, I thought I was really nervous going into it, but I was there for 2 or 3 hours just talking about everything that happened and why I was there, and it was really comforting to have someone that did care and that was there to listen and to help me.
Yeah. Did you? I mean, because you have you have family around you, you've got your friends around you, but you must have felt good knowing that eventually, once you did reach out, that must have been a bit of a load off. Going, I have help here, because we don't always want to talk to mom and dad, right? Let's be honest.
Mhm.
We don't want to go to mom and dad. We might think they know what they're going to say or think or whatever, but Craig McKenzie from St. Clair Child and Youth, you've got to feel pretty good hearing this story.
Yeah, I appreciate Ian sharing his story, and it's not uncommon for us, and it's one of the reasons actually that we're working so hard to kind of change how people think about mental health and where they go.
Yeah,
Ian's not unlike a lot of people in our community who don't know where to reach out when they're struggling, and we want to get people to reach out for help before it gets to be a crisis in their life and before things start to get worse. And Blue Water Health is a great place. But all too often, that's the first point of contact for people who are in mental health or reaching out for mental health supports. And it's great for people who have significant and severe mental health supports. But we want to be able to reach out to people and have them come to our organization through our walk-in clinic here before it gets to a crisis stage.
yeah, definitely before it gets to a crisis stage. And I guess as a people, and we live in a fairly small community. I mean, there's 73,000, but it's a close knit community. Um, and you hear me talk about community all the time, and it's our responsibility to help each other and seek out the greatness of each other and blah blah blah. But I'm not a trained professional when it comes to mental health. I have a heart and a brain, but is there a way we can, as individuals, we can recognize, because I mean, I know some people who have reached out and finally said, I have some mental health issues. and you never would have known it,
Yeah.
right? How do we recognize it?
Well, it's different for everyone, right? And people don't need their friends or family around them to be therapists, but they need
Yeah.
to know that they have a safe person they can trust and they can talk to, and that's the message we kind of send. I know you had the took on earlier for Face Off for mental health. When we're going out and speaking to coaches, and they're everyday guys, and we tell them, listen, you don't have to be a therapist. You just have to be approachable, and the most
Right.
important part is to be able to listen in a non-judgmental way and let people tell you their story. And then if you can, try to find the resources and try to have help them reach out for that support. And that's all people need to do. And there are lots of opportunities for those who do want to learn more. We have some safe talk training that we do, as well as some of our community partners out in the county, and again in Sarnia. For those that want to really dive a little deeper into signs and symptoms, but for family members and friends, the message is pretty clear. Just be a listening ear, be non-judgmental and supportive, and walk people through seeking out those supports.
Well, yeah, that's a good way to put it. And these supports have been around for a long time. I mean, let's be honest. Like St. Clair Child and Youth Services has been, what, 40 years? Almost 40 years?
But I think it's 47 this year.
It's 47. Wow. Okay. I knew it had to be a long time. I used St. Clair Child and Youth Services when I was a teenager back in the 80s. So that was a while ago.
We've had to do a few name changes since then.
Yes.
But part of it, years ago, like we've evolved as an organization and how we provide the service. A few years back, maybe 5 or 6 years ago, there were some pretty significant wait lists in the community. And to get into our supports and our services, people often had to wait 4 months or 10 months. And we heard loud and clear from the community that wasn't acceptable. So we've invested a fair amount of training with our staff and a lot of funding to develop a walk-in model, and that's a model where people can come and access the services when they need them. And it's met the need in the community, but we're now finding that with the walk-in service, it's then putting pressure on some of our more intensive services. So there's only so much we can do with the resources we have. So part of it's having the discussion about accessing the resources, but also looking at how to increase our resources and putting pressure on those who make the decisions, right?
Right. Well, now I guess we're talking government now. We're getting into that. Let me come back to that in just a minute, yep. Craig. Ian, I want to come back to you. These services are available to you, but did you know they were available? Like when you were struggling and in the very beginning of this for you, did you know that these services were available, or did you have to reach out and see if they were available?
I found out through, I did a mental health service at my high school where we would, where older students would talk to the grade 9s, and I was a part of that. So I learned about a lot of these services through them.
So the at your level at that time in high school. So this is where does this all start? I guess, like when we're young children, I guess, or we need to recognize it as soon as possible. I think when we say mental health, we tend to think, Craig, you tell me if I'm wrong, but I think we tend to think teenagers and young adults.
We do. And
it's beyond that.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, there's so much evidence in there now and clear with research that really the most important time to have an impact on mental health is in the first 18 months of life. And for some people, that's a bit of a head scratcher to understand that. But
yeah,
that's
explain.
That's when your brain develops. Like there are millions of synaptic connections happening in your brain. I'm probably not describing it well, but that's where the brain develops, and that's where we can have an impact. So as an organization, we've invested a fair amount in a circular security model that looks at trauma and attachment in infants. And it's one of those areas that we've identified as one of our 3 priorities, because we know that if we can invest early and help these young families before they get into the elementary years and into the secondary years in high school, they have so much more of an opportunity to thrive. And really, that's going to decrease the need for mental health services in the deeper end, and as well as if you look at it from an economic lens, the cost to our justice system, to our healthcare system, you name it.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. It's well, we're hearing more about it, I guess, when it comes to, we heard Bob Bailey talking about farmers and mental health. And then there's like our mutual friend Liz, we say 1 in 5. She likes to say 5 in 5.
Yeah,
because
it affects all of us. We all know
it
someone,
really.
and we all experience mental health in our life. We all suffer loss. We all have anxiety, things that that we have a hard time coping with, and sometimes we have the capacity and resources within ourselves or within those around us to get through it. But sometimes you need other help, and that's where we come in.
Yeah. Well, again, back to all ages. Like I have. I'm wearing this tie. I don't know if you can tell, but this is the Alzheimer's tie.
Very nice.
Right. So, and my father has Alzheimer's, and so there's mental health issues right there.
Yep.
His wife, who looks after him, I'm sure she struggles. I don't know what we label, and I shouldn't even say label, but what mental health defined overall as, because there's mental health, and then there's all these subcategories that go along with it. My mother's in a nursing home. I know she deals with it. And I'm just, it seems like it's everywhere. And that's why we, 5 and 5. What about at those levels? Is there assistance going on at those levels too, at those ages?
Yeah, absolutely. There are supports across the lifespan. And, we work closely with our counterparts at Canadian Mental Health, and we overlap some services. But as Ian mentioned, just as important are that's transitional services from youth to young adults.
Mm-hmm.
When our kids are heading off to college and university, that's a big adjustment for them. So I'm glad to hear when Ian talked about being connected with some supports at school, because that's so important. And I know that the college, university programs have invested a great deal over the last number of years at trying to increase those supports. So yeah, I think it's important that we recognize it from when our babies are born all the way up to our elderly.
Yeah. And I guess it's the conversation, it's kind of like, is it kind of like the sex talk? It's one where, no, they finally hit a certain age. I guess I better start talking about that. It's an ongoing conversation, I guess. Right. Ian, for you, your family that's around you, how did they handle it all? Like, were they, talk about that experience. Was your family like supportive, and did they encourage you to go to these services, or what was that experience?
So at first I didn't really know a whole lot about it. I didn't really tell them a whole lot at first. And then once they found out, they were a little surprised.
Yeah.
And they didn't really understand it. But then once we got talking to, I talked to them, and they were talking to some of the counselors and things I talked to, and then they became more understanding and a lot more supportive of it.
Yeah. Well, that's, I guess, part of it is understanding, right? And I guess we probably, I have some friends who have a teenage boy, and he's going to school. He gets good grades. He's active. He's happy, it seems. And all of a sudden this discussion came up, and they were like, what? I guess most parents, we look at our children, and we want the best. I think what's frustrating as a parent sometimes is when you want to help, when you want to help your children, but you feel helpless, and there's nothing, how do I help my children? And I'm not even just talking mental health. I said it the other day on the show, like, how do I teach my child how to lose? Or how do you feel when you lose a game or something like that? And if we feel helpless, the parents that are dealing with this, Craig, you know, with their children, and we're talking about the children here, but what about the parents in all of this?
Yeah, well, that's one of the strategies we look at here. Is we don't look at a child or youth onto themselves. They're part of a family unit, and the view we take quite often is, people often look at the behaviors or the symptoms that we're seeing, but those are usually as a result of just a lack of skills. So they either haven't found the skills in themselves, or have forgotten how to use them. So part of it is looking at how do they have the skills to cope with whatever's happening, and sometimes those skills are found in the people around them that can help teach them those skills. But sometimes coming to a place like this, and we can look at working on some of those skills, and not just for the youth, but also for the parents, because it is so important that we're using the same language and looking at things differently. And particularly when I mentioned those toddlers and infants, and quite often the lens we look at is those behaviors, and really what the child's trying to say is that they have an unmet need, and it's trying to understand what that need is. So that's really how we look at it, and try to have teach parents those skills to help address those needs in the kids.
Yeah. And then there's the stigma that goes along with all of this, right? Which is probably part of the reason why somebody like Ian would hesitate to speak out in the first place. And, certainly, I guess I'm not educated when it comes to this. I just know by the conversations I had. So I'm not here trying to be the pro, but I've had a lot of mental health conversations with people, and most will say, "Oh yeah, we need to talk about it. It's good to talk about it. It's good to talk." But then they themselves, who I know are having an issue, are not talking about it really. And because there's Michael Landsberg, I when I interviewed him earlier last year, and I just watched it again the other day, he made a really interesting statement. He said, "It's everything after the but." Yeah. It's, he's having a bad day. It must be tough, but, and then everything that follows, right? That's where the stigma begins. Is, I have bad days. Does that mean I have mental health issues? Maybe, I don't know, but, and the stigma is still the part. I mean, I think there's the awareness by doing things like this today, and media and fundraisers and things like Face Off for Mental Health. I don't think there's any question in this community, people know the resources are available. Likely.
It's still a challenge. You're surprised, David.
Yeah.
It's one of the things here when we engage families and youth, and similar to Ian's comments there, is, we have to put that message out that if people aren't faced with mental health issues or confronted with it or it hasn't touched their lives, they often don't know. And sometimes they're going to the emergency department, with a family doctor, trying to find the right resource. So that's a challenge we have, trying to continue to put that message out there through social media and in the schools, to help kids and the parents know where to get support.
Yeah. Okay. So it's like you're cutting in and out a little bit there. I don't know if it's, I think it's you. Yeah, I guess it's one of those things, until it happens to you, you don't really know anything about it, right? And I could say the same thing with Alzheimer's, like I didn't know much about Alzheimer's. I kind of did, but until it really happened to my dad and I, had to learn some things, you don't, I guess if you're not around it, you don't know about it, right? So I guess it's an ongoing thing that we have to keep putting out there. Ian, I know you got to get going soon, buddy, and you go whenever you need to go. I'm not trying to kick you out, but do you feel like enough is being done? Like, you mentioned that you have access at your school, etc., because you're obviously still dealing, with all of this. Do you feel like enough is being done, or is there more that needs to be happening?
I feel like there definitely could be more being done about it, because the fact that it is still occurring and still going on, I feel like there is a lot that has been being done about it, but I feel like because it is still going on, there's never just the time to stop.
Yeah, I hear you. Well, I think it's ongoing, right? I don't know that this is something that has a cure necessarily. I think a lot of times we look for, if there's cancer, we're looking for a cure. If there's some kind of illness, we're looking for a cure. I don't know as much as there's a cure as there is just how we handle it and accept it in our societies. Is that accurate to say, Craig?
Yeah, I think if you look at mental health the same way we look at health, there's ways to be well, and
Yeah.
you have to change things in your life, perhaps learn new skills, how to manage. And I think if we can start to view mental health in a similar way, we'll be better off. Less concerned about labeling it and sticking a diagnosis on certain conditions, when really it's a different conversation we need to be having.
Yeah, and how do we do that?
Well, this is a start. I think the important thing is that we have the conversations, and we try to make it more normalized, and we have it in our everyday lives. And we bring it out of the shadows. And I'm a big fan of Bell Let's Talk. I think it's important, but just as important are the other 364 days of the year.
Yeah.
And that's our concern, is that we raise awareness and we tell people to recognize the supports and the resources and seek them out. But our challenge becomes, what if they all do? And do we have the capacity to meet the need? And I know, I don't know if you don't want to get down to the political conversation, but that's the challenge we face here on a day in and day out basis, is trying to meet the needs of our community.
Yeah.
The resources are spread thin. And I know we had the ability last week, or actually, yeah, it was last week, myself and Sue Barnes, our director, along with two of our youth, Lindsay and Macy from our Voices of Youth Youth Engagement Committee here, had a chance to sit down with MPPs from across the province and some pre-budget consultations.
Nice.
And, it really was trying to put pressure on the government to say, follow through with your promise. They've promised $150 million into mental health at the provincial level. And then as well, there's supposed to be some more money coming through at the federal level. We need it. And if as lead agency, we think we know our community pretty well, and we know where to put the resources, but we need more resources to be able to do our jobs and to support the families in our community.
Well, I don't mind having a bit of the political conversation for sure, because it is one. I think it's not. I think it's a piece of this that isn't happening enough. Is that conversation about it? I'm not one that always says, when we have a problem, I first thing I do is, well, what's our government doing about it? I don't believe that. I believe our government should assist. And I know St. Clair Child and Youth, as you recently had to make some hard decisions, right? And there's just not enough money. There's just, like, I don't think anybody would argue about what's needed in a community. And right now I'm just talking our community. I don't know about the rest of the world. And I know, what I'm talking about. So I just, it angers me. It saddens me at the same time. But if it's an honest answer from the government that says, they got to find the money somewhere too, right? Because everybody's knocking on the government's door, especially in an election year. It's the best time to ask the government for money. Yeah. Typically. How does somebody like Ian, or a youth, or any of us for that matter, how do we put the pressure on our governments to say, wait a minute, this is not being looked after well enough?
Yeah, I think when you have the opportunity, certainly you can do it in the voting booth, right? Yeah, you have the opportunity to send your message to your MPP and let them know that it is a priority in our community. And we've sat down with Bob, and Bob's been supportive and has echoed our concerns further up the chain
Sure.
in the Toronto. But I think it's about speaking out and not accepting the status quo. As lead agency, it's not necessarily we're making the decisions, but we're tasked with the responsibility of
Right.
engaging our community to look at how our resources are delivered and engaging our community to say where the priorities are. And then, working with our partners to say, okay, these are our priorities and this is where we need to make an investment. And we can't have everything. We still think some things are very important, but just as important are, people having timely access to those supports, and as well those kids that we don't have a crisis program in this community, and we need to do a better job at supporting those kids who are in crisis because they're the most at-risk population we have. And you talk about the cost savings or the cost associated with it. We think we have a pretty good case in children's mental health because we know that of maybe last year the number of child and youth who presented at Blue Water Health Emergency Department increased by about 27%.
Wow.
And of that 500 and so odd number, about 70% of them are directed back to the community, to our organization. So if we can do a better job at building more supports here and having more opportunities for them to come to St. Clair and promoting that, then I'll tell you, our services are a lot cheaper than you're going to get by going to Blue Water Health.
Well,
There's
yeah,
a
that's for
nurse
sure.
and a doctor, and so
Well, and I think a
Blue
lot of
Water
people
Health
say,
is
well, we do
important
have a
for
24-hour crisis center. It's called the hospital. Well, yeah, it's open 24, but if they don't have the means and the staff there, like I've gone in there for a toenail broken or something, I mean, something simple, I guess is what I'm trying to say. I wouldn't do that, but and you sit down and there's two things that come to my mind. There's one, this is a really long wait. And number two, everybody in that room knows that I'm here.
Yeah. And that was the message we heard, loud and clear from parents and from youth is, it's a great place. But for a lot of them, it's not the most appropriate place. And we had young people, Macy shared her story last week, a very personal story. And I have her permission to share it, a little bit about, because the ward is full up at the hospital for children and youth, because there aren't a lot of resources. She had to wait in the emergency department and had a security guard there to monitor her overnight. And for a youth who's at their most vulnerable, I think we can do better. I think we can do better. And I'm really glad that she's lended her voice to this, and she's part of making change, along with the families that we're connected with as well.
That's a great story. Macy, thanks for allowing that to be shared. Ian, was that something that you were hesitant to at first to share your story, or to ask for help? Like, you say you went to Blue Water Health. Did you feel embarrassed? Were you worried that somebody was going to see you there that recognized you and maybe go, "Oh, what's he doing here?"
All right, so I'm gonna have to go after this, but
yeah,
I'll share the story. So when I went there, I found that, like you said, the wait was really long. I ended up falling asleep before I even saw anyone.
Right.
And then it was once I got there, like you were sharing about Macy's story, how she had to wait there in the ward for the security guard. I had that too. And for me, that was really hard to do. And I found that difficult because just being there and having these other people know that you're there and see you there, and that you have to be monitored this whole time, and you're in your own little room, just isolated from everyone else. Also I feel like when I was at my most vulnerable, being in my own room just with the security guard, and that's like the only type of communication I could have, that didn't help.
Right. And that goes back to the stigma. It's like, oh, what's up with that guy over there? He's got a security guard with him. He's in a room, and maybe the word crazy comes out, or whatever those conversations. Yeah, I hear you. Ian, I know you got to run, buddy, and I'm so grateful that you're here with us today and sharing your story. And I'm very proud of you for what you've been doing down there at the school, and glad you reached out. So as always, and I know you do, you're busy, stay in touch, and enjoy the rest of your day, buddy.
All right. Thank you for having me.
Thanks,
You're
Ian.
welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah, Ian Linton, he's a great story, and that was fantastic that he chose to. It was funny because I was going to reach out to him and say, I'm doing this thing today, would you? And as soon as I had posted I was doing it, he was like, hey, I need to be on this. So and that, I guess, is a success story, right, Craig? By not just the fact that he was willing to, that he recognized and said, hey, me telling my story is just as important as me talking to somebody about my issues.
Absolutely. And it's so important that we do tell the story, that there are a lot of successes, and there are a lot of youth and families that do receive, great support. We have an amazing staff team here who are committed and dedicated to the work they do, and often go above and beyond.
Oh, yeah.
I say, last year, if we start including all of the workshops, and we're looking at the child, youth, and their families, we saw over 6,000 through our doors last year.
Wow.
And and 7% of the kids in Lambton County, 7% of the kids in Lambton County receive service at our agency. So, I certainly want to, as much as we talk about the need for more, which is important, I need to really recognize the great work of our staff at doing what we can with what we have.
Well, yes, I can certainly agree with you. I know nobody's getting rich around there, and but I do know, in dealing with St. Clair Child and Youth, there's a lot of passion in that agency.
For sure.
From the staff. I mean, the staff is they're yeah, point taken and point put out there for sure. That's good. What's the next step? And I don't want to keep you. I know we'll wrap things up. I know you got stuff to do, so I appreciate you. But just before we do, okay, so these kind of things we're doing, we should be doing 365. Get that. We need money. We recognize that there's some services. What's the final chapter in all this?
Well, there isn't a final chapter. I think, is that we continue having the conversation. And I think, for those in the community that want to get involved, there are ways to get involved. If you're a family member who has gone through the system or is in the system, we have the Lambton Family Advisory Committee, a great group of dedicated family members in the community that are that meet on a regular basis to talk about the issues and the system pieces that are going on. As well, we have youth that want to be part of system change, the Voices of Youth. They're meeting on a regular basis as well. So there's a lot of really good things happening right now.
That's good. All right.
A couple other things, Dave, before I
yeah, sure. Go ahead. There's no time limit here.
Yeah, like you had the Face Off for Mental Health hat on. We do have a game. There you go. I love it. See, even
there we go.
Fit heads like ours.
I got a big head.
So,
the hockey game coming up.
We have a partnership with RBC and the Sting coming up on Saturday, February 9th. They're taking on the Guelph Storm. So we're really celebrating the Face Off for Mental Health campaign, which has been out in minor hockey the past 2 years. So it's great to have the Sting on board. Yeah. So we'll have one of the teams, Tom Badcock's Lambton Junior team, will be sporting the Face Off jerseys they wore this year, and they've done a lot of really good things to raise awareness in his community, and certainly Tom with his golf tournament he has every year. So that's happening, and if folks want discounted tickets, they're welcome to email me. You can find my contact information on our website. As well, next week, so February 1st through 7th is Eating Disorder Awareness Week. Oh. So it's really important that we have a conversation about eating disorders because it is one of those issues in our community that that certainly is a priority, and it's one of those that really is a hard issue to tackle. So Marilyn Gladue is going to be at City Hall on Friday, February 1st at 12:30 in the afternoon to have a proclamation about Eating Disorders Awareness Week. So folks are welcome to come and gather, and it'll be a short, probably half-hour gathering. So again, if folks are interested, we can join us at City Hall. As
Okay.
well, Sarnia Speaks, which has done an amazing job in this community. I've got the pin
Yes.
going here. They've had some wonderful dialogues, and they're keeping the conversation going in our community. Danielle and her group has done an amazing job. So Thursday, February 7th at 6:30 at the Sarnia Library Auditorium, they're having a dialogue on eating disorders. So that's
Okay.
for those that haven't come before. It's just an open discussion. You're going to hear from 3 panelists. They're going to share their story, and then usually an opportunity at the end to ask questions or talk a little bit about your own personal experiences, as well as there's always some great resources that are available for folks that need it. And the last thing is on Tuesday, February 5th at Lambton College. They're hosting a wellness event
Yeah.
at the from 4 to 7 at the college fitness complex. So I'd encourage folks that want to get involved and to find out more about what's happening. Certainly to check those out, and you can follow. We post all of this on our social media feeds, on our Facebook
Yeah.
and on our Twitter, and on our website.
Perfect. Craig, could you do me a favor? Can you email me all that information that you have, the dates and times and everything, and then that way I can put it out, and I can do what I can do to attend them as well. That's
Great.
perfect. This has been a great conversation, and let's say we can never have enough of this conversation. So I thank you for being here, and thanks to St. Clair Child and Youth Services for doing what you do. And thanks to my friend Ian Linton who stopped by, and thanks to all of you who've been watching. I'm going to talk for a few more minutes, but Craig, is there anything else you want to throw in there? We're going to let you get back to work.
Yeah, no, this has been great. I think I appreciate the work you do, Dave, to keep this conversation going as well. And I'll see you at the Sting game, I guess.
Yeah, I'll see you there. We might even put you on camera there too. Well, we'll put Liz on.
That's a better way to go. Yeah, I've got a face for radio.
There you go. All right, take care, Craig. Say hello to everybody down there for me.
You bet.
Craig McKenzie from St. Clair Child and Youth Services. You know, I really appreciate St. Clair Child and Youth Services, and I appreciate a lot that goes on in this community and for support of mental health. So I'm going to take the hat off because I look silly. So again, thanks, Craig, and my friend Ian Linton. I'm very proud of Ian for coming on here. I didn't know exactly what he was going to talk about, so that was good for him to share his story. Are you happy with what's being done by our government? You know, and again, I say, you know, we don't put everything on the government. We have to work on some things ourselves in our communities. But you heard there what Craig said about, you know, reach out to your MPs and your MPPs and your local governments and your city councils and your mayors, and go have the conversations with them. Send them the email, but you know, if you can face to face, I think it's more effective, honestly. And I know there's a lot of issues going on that affect whether we have services or we don't have services. You know, Craig mentioned St. Clair Child and Youth Services is as the leading agency, they're tasked with making some decisions sometimes, but they're also kind of told, well, this is the way it's going to go. So definitely we need money. So if you want to help, there's some ways that you can help. I'm sure everybody watching has somehow been affected by mental health, whether it's in a teeny weeny little way or a great big way. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, before I get carried away, thank you so much, everybody, for watching. And I appreciate your support here of this. And the way you can support more is by clicking this share button and sharing this conversation that we've had here today. And I got a feeling we're gonna come up with something. I think we should do this once a month at least. We'll figure that out. What do you think? If you've enjoyed this show, please put a comment down below in the comments. And again, the best thing you can do is click the share button. Share it to your friends on your timeline, your Twitter, wherever. Instead of sending everything to everybody's inbox with Bell Let's Talk Day, share this video around and let's have the conversations. And now that's it for me. I thank you so much for watching. That's all the time I got for you for this time. I will see you next time when we're back here talking about some more. Take care, everybody.